Good morning. As we begin our service, we acknowledge that we gather from across the traditional lands of the Western Abenaki people. We pay respect to their elders, both past and present. My name is Steve Finner, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. As today's worship associate, I extend to you a warm welcome. Thank you for joining us in this time of worship from wherever you are, whether you are here in the sanctuary or here virtually. We deeply appreciate your presence and your fellowship. The Unitarian Church of Montpelier is a Unitarian Universalist congregation founded in 1864. We are a religious community that welcomes all as we journey together, seeking spiritual wholeness and justice in the world. Whether you are a newcomer, a longtime member, or somewhere in between, you are part of our community, and we are glad that you are here. Any and all newcomers to our congregation and worship service are invited to fill out our welcome form, which is shared in the Zoom chat and available at the welcome table so that we can connect with you outside of our service. If you are joining us in Zoom, the chat function will be on for much of the service. It's a great way to publicly welcome and support one another, to affirm the hard work and effort of our worship team, and to share good vibes and positive thoughts with each other. Thank you to our greeters and our ushers who are offering hospitality and tech help throughout the service. Additionally, on Zoom, click on the live transcript button wherever it lives on your screen for increased accessibility. I invite you now to take a moment to turn your video on and go into gallery view on your Zoom screen, or turn to your neighbors from your seat here in the sanctuary. Let us greet one another with a wave hello and a warm smile. Again, a warm welcome to each and every one of you. I have a few brief announcements about the life of our congregation. We are no longer offering our online children's chapel. Families are craving outdoor connections, and the Lifespan Spiritual Exploration Committee will put their energy there. Many thanks to Beth Merrill, Liz Benjamin, Janet Poten, and Katie Spring for being such a great team throughout, and to all the family whose participation, whether regular or sporadic, has made it so worth the effort. We are in need of new volunteers for many of our church committees and teams. Now is a great time to share your gifts and skills with our community. There are more details in the e-news. And finally, please read the weekly e-newsletter to learn more about the many upcoming events in our church community. And now, let us enter more deeply into our time of worship with our prelude.
Good morning on this Passover weekend and Easter Sunday. I am the Reverend Joan Javier Duval, minister of the Unitarian Church of Montpelier. I use she, her pronouns. Our opening words this morning are adapted from Gretchen Haley. Roll away the stone of your hesitant heart. Let the light shine on all the sleeping shadows. Awaken to this day that offers itself to you and to all with a great extravagance. Awaken to this gift, this beauty, this chance that we might still find healing, that we might still begin again and anew, that we might be changed by the in and the out of breath, that we might still burst forth like the crocuses, that we might still surprise this earth with a new song, sung together, calling us all in and then sending us back out, and know it all as a blessing. Come, let us worship together. And please rise in body or spirit, join in singing our opening hymn. It's number 266 in the gray hymnal, Now the Green Blade Riseth.
We welcome Mary Ann Ludlow to our pulpit, who will now light our chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith. We invite you to light a chalice at home if you have one nearby. With words found in the Passover Haggadah, may the light we now kindle inspire us to use our powers to heal and not to harm, to help and not to hinder, to bless and not to curse, to serve you, Spirit of freedom. Please join us now in saying our congregational covenant. We covenant to speak honestly and listen deeply to each other and the voice within. Treat each other with compassion and honor our differences. Take responsibility for the impact our words, actions, and inactions have on each other. support each other in times of need and of grief, and celebrate the beauty and joy in our lives. Honor the gifts of the past and be gentle with each other as we grow. Encourage each other in the brave work of creating a more beloved community and a healthy, sustainable world, and forgive each other and start again.
Our two readings this morning bring to life the ancient stories at the heart of Passover and Easter, respectively. The first reading, Desert Spring, is by Unitarian Universalist minister Victoria Stafford. They had no idea where they were going when they left that night, in the dark, without lights, without shoes, without bread, their children smothered against them so they would make no noise. They had no idea what they were getting into following this Moses, this wild-eyed one who claimed visions and made promises, but who, after all, could guarantee them nothing except death if they were caught. They had no idea, these slaves, what it could mean, this promise of land, their own country, and life abundant. Of freedom, they knew nothing except what they could taste by living in its opposite, slavery. And that taste became a hunger. And that hunger became insatiable till they were ravenous for freedom. They went into the wilderness. There they wandered 40 years, which in those days was a lifetime. 40 was a good old age, so many of them died before getting anywhere, and many were born in the desert and grew to adulthood knowing nothing but the journey. Not slavery, not freedom, just the going. They whined and complained and muttered, and some mutinied, for they were a stiff-necked and rebellious people. You can read it for yourself. Ungrateful people, even when manna rained down from heaven and quails were sent to feed them. Unhappy people, longing out loud even for the familiar security of Egypt, of all places, where at least they knew what to expect, as awful as it was. Impatient people making cheap little idols and gods of metal to bargain with in secret when the traveling got hard or merely dull, and the days and years became monotonous. In the springtime, we remember, the promised land is not a destination, it is a way of going. The land beyond the Jordan, that country of freedom and dignity and laughter, you carry it inside you all the while. It is planted in your mind and heart already, before you ever start out, before it even occurs to you that in order to leave that life in Egypt, the intolerable bondage of that life, what you need to do is stand up and walk forward.
Generosity is a spiritual value central to our personal well-being and the well-being of our church community. It is a blessing and a privilege of our free church tradition to support the shared values of this congregation with the generosity of our collective financial resources. Each month through the UCM Community Pouch program, we share part of our collection with an important church fund, or a community organization aligned with our values. During the month of April, our community pouch recipient is the Vermont Interfaith Power and Light. The donations received this month will be designated for supporting the newly established Ellie Cressy Webster Memorial Program. This program will support improving energy efficiencies at those faith-based communities which are not currently eligible for the VTIPL grant program. VTIPL will be hosting its spring conference next Sunday, April 24th, beginning at 1:30 p.m. Details are in the current e-news. Your contribution to the UCM Community Pouch this month will directly support this work. You can make a financial contribution today by placing your offering in the pouch found at the end of the pew if you are here in the sanctuary, or by donating online. Go to ucmvt.org and click Donate to UCM. There are options to contribute to the general fund, which supports the general operating budget of the church, to the community pouch, or to both. You can also mail a check to the church, or you can use our text to give option. Simply send a text message with the word give to 802-266-4848 and follow the instructions sent to you. May I also note that the UCM Stewardship Committee would like to thank all of you members and friends who have already made a pledge to support the 2022-2023 church year budget. As of 7:05 this morning, we have received 107 pledges on behalf of 131 members, totaling $220,000. And let me add that this is not just about the money. It's about the love and the dedication that so many of us feel for this congregation. So thank you. You can still make your pledge online or using the form sent by mail. And in thanks and celebration, and we hope it's not too chilly a celebration, you are invited to join the Stewardship Committee for that celebration following today's service. Bagels and coffee will be served in the churchyard. We are so grateful to each and every one of you for your generosity in its many forms. While the offering is being given and received, please enjoy a musical offering by our choir.
For the beauty
I invite you to take a breath and to join me in a time of prayer with these words by my colleague, Paul Sawyer, who serves our UU congregation in Heartland, Vermont. Loving God, we gather today in humility, inspired by the courage of the slaves in Egypt and by their hard journey of generations. Awed by the story of the stone rolled back and the surprise of the empty tomb. We gather in defiance of the pain and the injustice that came before, and of the pain and the injustice that will likely come again. We gather in faith that the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness does not overcome it. We gather in hope that life can begin anew, that all will be made whole, that the beloved community shall arise at last. Here among these spring flowers, here in the warm glow of friends and families come home, here surrounded by our memories of all who have gone before us, bequeathing to us their own hopes and dreams, we pray for faith and strength to stand for what is good, to do what we must, to live lives of integrity and peace, to celebrate we celebrate in gratitude and joy for this community, for the beauty of this day, for our ancient stories of unimaginable possibility, for all the hope and love promised in the journey to freedom, in the stone rolled away. And let us join now in a time of quiet meditation. Our second reading this morning is by Unitarian Universalist minister Kendall Gibbons. This is called The Humanist Speaks of Easter. There are only two things that we know for sure. One, they stashed Jesus's body in a tomb temporarily until they could get a chance to bury it properly. And when they came back, the tomb was empty. Make of that what you will. There are many possible explanations, some more likely than others. I don't believe that Jesus came back from the dead. Neither did Martin or Malcolm. Neither did Viola Liuzzo or Frozan Safi, the women's rights activist shot by the Taliban in Afghanistan last November. Neither will dismembered journalist Jamal Khashoggi or Alexei Navalny when he dies in a Russian prison. Neither will documentary filmmaker Brent Renaud or photographer Maxim Levin, both killed by invading armies in Ukraine. Kevin Strickland and Lamont McIntyre will not get back the stolen decades of their lives. I don't believe that the crucifixion is a story with a happy ending, or that it was a one-time event. It happens over and over as the human journey unfolds. It happens to us and to the people we love. It happens to the righteous and the innocent. Crucifixion happens, and it feels like the end of the world every time. It feels like nothing could matter anymore, ever. And then inevitably and miraculously, something happens next. Something happens, of course it does, because the world hasn't ended yet. It's not always an empty tomb. How trite would that become? Mostly, the beloved bodies just lie right there, peacefully decomposing. But something happens, and whether we want it or not, a new chapter begins. Maybe the sun comes up, or the lilies do. Spring rolls around. That happens. Or memories come, or someone needs you. You eat food. That happens. You walk down the road and share a recollection. Life happens, keeps happening. The dead don't rise, but we do. One day it happens, you take a breath, and it doesn't hurt to breathe. You start to see people again, really see them. Hope rises. Community rises. You rise, we rise, life rises. Not because death isn't real. Crucifixion is not just pretend, but something else is just as real, maybe even more real. Something happens next. That is the other thing we know for sure. Life rises, outrage rises, love rises, faith rises, tears rise, hope rises. This I do believe. What in you yearns to be free? What in you is in need of new life? In this spring season, we come again to this time of holy days. And on this particular weekend, the calendars align with the ending of the Christian Holy Week and the beginning of the Jewish Passover. The story of the Israelites' exodus from Egypt and their freedom from slavery and the Easter story of the death and resurrection of Jesus both speak to the literal and figurative journeys we take as humans through passages of despair to moments of liberation and rebirth, beginnings and new life. Both stories mark life-changing moments for their communities. I like to imagine Moses, Miriam, all of the Israelite people as they crossed the Red Sea and turned around to look back at the land they had escaped, where they had been enslaved. I imagine them looking back at that place where so many tears were shed, where their bodies were pushed to their limits doing backbreaking work, where they cried out again and again for mercy and for liberation. They look back perhaps almost in disbelief as the waters close in on the Egyptian Pharaoh's army, and they realize they are free. A whole new life awaits them. Yes, they will end up wandering in the wilderness for 40 years until they make it to the promised land. But at that moment, standing at the edge of the sea, something new has begun. More than a millennium later, as the story goes, Jesus of Nazareth, a Jewish teacher, celebrated the Passover Seder with his followers. He told them of his impending death, but also that he would have new life. He was sentenced to death for being a threat to the Roman Empire and was brutally put to death on a cross. Those closest to him mourned his death and went to his tomb to care for his body. Mary Magdalene, Salome, and Mary, the mother of James, among them. They find his body gone and are told that he has been raised from the dead. In some accounts, the women who had gone to the tomb go to tell the other disciples. Some versions of the story say that Jesus even appeared to groups of them within days of his death and his apparent resurrection. Whatever may have happened, this was a turning point for this community of believers. The teachings of their beloved friend now had new meaning, and they were starting upon an uncharted path, a path of carrying forward the message of their friend and teacher that love is boundless and does not conform to the wishes of the powerful. From the ancient people of Israel fleeing bondage in Egypt to the followers of Jesus resisting Roman Empire and into the years and peoples that have followed, the thirst for freedom and new life has been strong. The longing for freedom runs deep. It is called to heart and mind as these ancient stories are remembered, as the memories of desert crossings, death, and resurrection come forward, along with the earth's own remembrance of spring's return. We seek freedom. Freedom from addiction, freedom from hatred, freedom from overconsumption, freedom to love who we love without scorn or derision, freedom to express the fullness of our gender and sexuality without fear of violence, freedom to live in peace, freedom to live not according to the value assigned to you by the job market or the housing market or the appreciation or depreciation of your investments, or by a history book or the exclusionary theology of your childhood, but the freedom to live according to the sacredness and the inherent worth that you know is yours by virtue of being alive and by virtue of being a manifestation of divine love. We seek freedom and the new life that emerges when that freedom comes at last. What relief we can feel when freedom comes, and yet As both stories point out, we can also feel tentative in the face of that new possibility. Freedom is what we want. New life is what we want, but we aren't always ready for it. The seas have parted, the stone has rolled away, yet it can take time and working through a whole lot of fear to feel ready for what comes next. I imagine the early disciples of Jesus felt a lot of fear. They had just witnessed their teacher executed. They knew how risky it was to speak out against the powerful and to be called to continue preaching love even in the face of death. Moving through fear takes us on a journey from freedom to liberation. The late Archbishop Desmond Tutu spoke to this journey. He said, "Liberation is costly. Even after the Lord had delivered the Israelites from Egypt, they had to travel through the desert. They had to bear the responsibilities and difficulties of freedom. We must remember that liberation is costly. It needs unity. We must hold hands and refuse to be divided. We cannot get from freedom to liberation alone. We need others alongside us who share the longing for freedom, who join with us in bearing the responsibilities and difficulties of that freedom, the complaining, the weariness, the obstacles, the refusal even to move forward. Yet in our joining together, we can move with possibility in the direction of liberation and new life. We move towards claiming the freedom of spirit and the divine love that is ours and that cannot be taken away. Enslavement could not take this away. Crucifixion could not take this away. And today we continue to break free and to bring others along with us. It is a new day and a new season to renew our search for freedom and our commitments to liberation from oppression, the oppression that lives within ourselves and the oppression that is built into the systems that keep some scraping by at the margins and others fearful to publicly proclaim the trueness of who they are. In this season of spring, as the earth and the holy stories guide us to liberation and rebirth, let us open ourselves to the light. The return of the light ushers in the possibility of the morning, the breaking of day and of new life. As we have done in the past, we have made it through the deep darkness of winter, and along with the crocuses and the tree buds, we are once again re-emerging. We are re-emerging and rising with hope for new life. Kendall Gibbons writes, "Life happens, keeps happening. The dead don't rise, but we do. One day it happens. You take a breath, and it doesn't hurt to breathe. You start to see people again, really see them. Hope rises, community rises, you rise, we rise, life rises, not because death isn't real. Crucifixion is not just pretend, but something else is just as real, maybe even more real. Something happens next. That is the other thing we know for sure. Life rises. Outrage rises, love rises, faith rises, tears rise, hope rises. This I do believe. Indeed, let us believe. We too will rise on this new day, and that will be our Alleluia. And I invite you to rise in body or spirit to join in singing our closing hymn. You have the option of singing the words to either "Lo, the Earth Awakes Again," which is number 61 in the gray hymnal, or "Jesus Christ is Risen Today," number 268. Both hymns are set to the same tune. We'll share both sets of words on our slides. We welcome your theological claim of choice this morning. Thank you for that robust singing. As we draw our service to a close, we extinguish the chalice, carry within each of us its healing flame, the warmth of community, and the spark of hope into the days and the week ahead. Please join now in saying our congregational mission statement. We welcome all as we build a loving community to nurture each person's spiritual journey, serve human need, and protect the earth, our home. For those of you in Zoom, I will invite you once again to go into gallery view to have your video on. I know some of you have Easter bonnets. I forgot my bonnet. Deep apologies. I see some in the sanctuary. I see some on the Zoom screens. Feel free to show those off. Take a moment to revel in the strength and the hope of this community. May you go into this new day, embracing the freedom and the liberation that we all seek, and letting the light of this new day shine upon you. Happy Easter and Passover and Ramadan blessings to you all. And we conclude our service with the postlude.
Thank you to everyone who has joined us this morning and everyone on the worship team for this beautiful service. Welcome, spring, and everyone to UCM and